Inside ADX Supermax Prison, the worst prison in the United States. The siren starts like a knife cutting the air, thin and merciless. Red lights wash the gray corridors, turning concrete into a warning. A voice on the speaker says one word, flat and cold: lockdown. Inside a tiny cell, a man sits up on his firm bed and freezes. He knows the rule: no talking, no sudden moves, no approach to the door. He can feel the hum in the walls, the hidden systems that bind this place together like nerves. Somewhere far from him, a hand hovers above a big red button. If that hand presses down, 1,400 steel doors will slam and stay shut. Every tier, every range, every unit. On the control room screens, there's a grid of moving squares and blinking numbers. But one small pane, range 13, hold their attention. It's the tightest place in the tightest prison in the United States. And tonight, something there is not right. A camera shows a shadow slide near a food slot. No one knows if it was a trick of the light, a test, a signal, or the start of something worse. In a fortress built to remove surprises, even a shadow becomes a threat. The siren dips, rises, then levels out. The air itself feels hard, like the prison is bracing. A lock throws somewhere, then another. The man in the cell looks at the narrow window that shows only sky and roof, no horizon, no landmarks, and understands the lesson ADX teaches every day. If the outside is a map, this place is a blindfold. And a blindfold can be safer than a path, if you're the one holding the button. In the control room, the light is blue and clinical. Screens stack like a wall of eyes. Officers don't talk much here. They measure. One hand hovers over the panic button. A small circle with enormous gravity. Around it, data crawls. Heartbeats a machine made of walls and steel. The feed from range 13 is centered, magnified, stabilized. Is that a note under the door? A second officer asks, leaning into the glow. He's careful with his tone, because words carry weight in places where silence is policy. On another screen, a sensor map outlines pressure pads, motion detectors, door states, camera angles. Everything is accounted for except intent, and intent is what kills. Stand by. The supervisor says, eyes not leaving the monitor. The shadow near the food slot halts at the tiny, high window, the 4-inch square that shows sky and nothing else. That design is the point. You can't orient yourself, can't build a mental map, can't plan. The first officer lowers his thumb toward the button. In the tunnel under the cell blocks, boots pound concrete. Radios crackle with messages that are almost code. All units, eyes on H unit. Possible breach of protocol. Prepare to seal. The officers have trained their bodies to be calm when the body wants a hurry. Calm wins. Calm lives. Then the screens stutter to a blue grid, a software heartbeat. For 1 second, the entire prison holds its breath. The grid blinks away, and the picture returns. Somewhere far above Florence, the sky is clean and cold. Somewhere inside the picture, a square of white lies too close to a door. Inside ADX, the cells are built to be answers to every question you might ask. Poured, reinforced concrete forms the floor, the bed platform, the desk, the walls. The stool is hard and cannot be broken down for parts. A polished steel mirror is bolted tight, its edges blunted. The toilet knows when it's blocked and shuts itself off. The shower runs on a timer and then stops whether you're ready or not. The sink faucet is shaped in a way that denies the very idea of a weapon. And above it all, high and narrow, a window frames only the roof and a patch of sky, so thin you could mistake it for a lie. Tonight, the camera's zoom shows a food slot and a square of white that shouldn't be there. In a normal prison, a scrap of paper might be trash. Here could be a signal line, a decoy, a probe for a weakness that doesn't exist until it does. The inmate sits perfectly still on the firm bed, hands resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the slow blue light from a television that plays lessons, news, and nature scenes filtered by rules no one sees. He knows the choreography of this place, the 10 steps straight that fill the exercise pit, the 31 steps in a circle that make a loop out of a life. He knows how sound travels through vents and drains. He knows, better than anyone outside, how small things become big. The camera holds a frame, patient and unsleeping. Somewhere down the corridor, a lock cycles its breath, and between the paper and the door lies a gap measured in millimeters and meaning. The control center is a cockpit for a city of one purpose: control. On the screens, tiny green icons trace motion in corridors you'll never see. Pressure pads feel the weight of saws and wheels. Cameras watch from angles that deny blind spots. A spreadsheet lists 1,400 doors, each obedient to the will of one room. The second officer tilts his head. "That's a note, right?" He says again, softer now. The first officer doesn't answer because they're trained to avoid conclusions until the data tells them where to look. His thumb drops another millimeter. He feels the memory of past alarms in his hand the way old injuries feel rain. Radios sync. All units confirm positions. In the tunnel, a team checks a blast door. Badge code voice. The 3 steps always in that order. H unit, prepare to seal. The difference between order and panic is a well-rehearsed sentence, and everyone here has said it in their sleep. The camera tightens just enough to turn the square of paper into texture. No thread, no line, no gloss of plastic. If something's there, it's not visible, which leaves 2 options: nothing, or the kind of something that waits for you to touch it. And then, sudden as a blink, every screen burps into that blue grid again. A digital blink that steals a heartbeat and gives it back. Systems reset. The image returns. The officer keeps his thumb steady. Calm wins. Calm lives. What happens next makes more sense if you know why this place exists at all. The story begins decades earlier, October 22nd, 1983, at the federal penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. In a matter of hours, 2 correctional officers, Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman, were killed in separate attacks by inmates who had already embraced violence as currency. The names of those attackers, Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain, became shorthand for the moment the system learned that even the highest security then in use could be bent by men with nothing left to lose. Norman Carlson, then director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, faced a reality you don't meet in theory. The model changed. Marion went into permanent lockdown. The lesson took shape in steel and concrete. If movement could be a weapon, then limit movement. If communication could be a weapon, then control communication. Years later, that lesson would be poured into the ground in Colorado, stamped into doors that can all close at once, wired into sensors that catch the footfall of a lie. When ADX Florence opened, it wasn't just another maximum security facility. It was an answer to a question carved into 2 names and 2 graves. What would it take to keep men like that from killing again? That's why a scrap of paper in a place like this isn't a scrap of paper. It's a test of the design, of the idea that order can crush chaos if you notice early and act quickly. On a dry plain south of the small town of Florence, in Fremont County, Colorado, the idea turned into earth. The land is open here. Brown hills, big sky, winter winds that slip their hands under your jacket. From far away, the new complex looked like a low gray shape, a puzzle of rectangles and angles. Up close, it became something else, a fortress that seems to listen. The locals understood both the risk and the promise. The county already held prisons, but this one would bring 750 to 900 permanent jobs. People raised $160,000 to buy 600 acres and hand it to the future. 2 architecture firms in Colorado Springs were chosen. They had to think, not just in walls and roofs, but in systems, sight lines, choke points, dead ground, signal flow. They designed a place where silence is part of the plan, where a window shows only sky and roof, where a door, a hatch, a slot obey electronic voices that never get tired, where a control room can lock down an entire world with a single press. The groundbreaking drew a crowd because crowds like to witness beginnings. But this was less a birth than a vow, a promise that this place would be the last place for men who couldn't be safely held anywhere else. On January 10th, 1995, the gates closed for the first time. The air changed a little. And for all the miles of fencing and concrete, the most important part remained out of sight: how quickly it could notice, decide, and act. If you could spread the blueprints across a table the way the architects once did, you'd see the logic in the lines. Cells arranged so that sound doesn't travel the way rumor moves. Corridors angled to give cameras clean shots and deny corners where a body could vanish. Utility chases that feed life into the building and swallow risk before it grows teeth. The exercise pit sunk like empty swimming pools. Narrow sky above, no horizon. 10 steps straight, 31 in a circle. A toothless world by design. Even the furnishings are plans were in the shape of furniture. The concrete desk resists the blade that never comes. The hard stool doesn't break. The polished steel mirror keeps its purpose, but not its edge. The electronic lights obey the hand in control. Room more than the finger in the cell. A television becomes a window that can be closed instantly. The sink's faucet refuses to become anything but a faucet. And the window, that famous slit, shows you a truth that feels like a trick. There is sky, but you will not use it to escape. In 1,000 small ways, the drawings answer the question the officers ask every day. What could be used, and how do we refuse it? Tonight, all that design is aimed at a folded square of paper 5 inches from a door. Building a place like this meant pouring more than concrete. It meant pouring intention. Crews worked under floodlights and sun, welding rebar into cages that would be hidden forever, setting forms that would birth walls with no forgiveness in them. Electricians ran wire and paths you'd never see, feeding cameras and sensors that would watch long after the workers forgot the routes they traced. HVAC teams built a wind that the building could command, dampers that close like jaws, vents that breathe when told and hold their breath when ordered. Every door was measured not just to fit, but to obey. The cost, about $60 million, meant nothing without the philosophy that spent it well. When people say Supermax, they sometimes picture bigger walls or thicker bars. The truth is colder and smarter. It's about removing opportunities, limiting chance, cutting the lines that schemes travel on, and then testing all of it again and again until the system feels like a second skin. Which brings us back to tonight. A small white square on a gray floor, and a team trained to see signals where others would see trash. They don't rush because rushing is noisy, and noise is a kind of blindness. They prepare because preparation is vision. Dusk paints a finished complex in steel blue and shadow. Guard towers rise like punctuation at the edge of a sentence no one wants to finish. The fences are more than barbs and wire. They're circuits that feel weight and heat. The patrol road runs between layers of decision. If this, then that. If movement, then lock. If pressure, then alarm. From a distance, ADX looks like it doesn't move at all. Up close, it's always moving. Air, cameras, data, doors. You can't hear it unless something goes wrong. Tonight, nothing has gone wrong yet. A scrap of paper is only a scrap of paper, until a hand reaches out. Inside, the control room breathes in numbers and breathes out orders. The officer's thumb is steady. The supervisor keeps his voice level. The team in the tunnel checks badges and codes with the respect you give to rituals that save lives. No one dramatizes. There's no room for that here. The only theater is in the minds of men who are always testing. And still, for all the design, the weight, the intention, this place is only as strong as the choices made in the next few minutes. The difference between a nothing and a headline lives in how gently a pair of tongs closes. The corridor to the suspect's cell runs straight and unforgiving, lit by fixtures that make their own weather, cold, shadowless, clinical. Doors line both sides, identical and stubborn. At the far end, a gate waits for a 3-part key. Badge scan, code entry, verbal confirmation. The tunnel team approaches in a pattern they could walk in their sleep. Shield front, recorder behind, restraints ready, leader at the window. The leader checks the view through the steel mesh square. Calm inmate, hands visible, eyes on the glow of the television that shows mountains he will never touch. He taps the door and speaks through the built-in intercom. Do not move. No answer. That's fine. Silence here is often consent. He signals. The hatch slides open a few inches with a motor's even hum. Cold air slides like a blade into the space between. The officer with the shield lowers his center of gravity. The leader extends a long pair of tongs toward the paper square. He's close enough now to see fibers, to see that it's nothing special at all, unless it is. In the control room, radios click as the supervisor makes space for the only words that matter. Proceed. The leader closes the tongs around the edge with the gentlest kiss of pressure. And just then, a second light ignites on the far wall of the control room. Perimeter east. Active. A different alarm. A different problem. Two places at once in a building designed to deny that possibility. The leader freezes. The whole corridor feels like it leans forward. The paper waits, lighter than air, heavier than a threat. The exercise yard at ADX Florence is not what most people imagine. There is no open field, no sunlight you can stand in. It is a concrete pit, high-walled and bare, shaped like an empty swimming pool. The only piece of sky is a rectangle framed by razor wire. In that space, a man can take 10 steps in a straight line or 31 in a circle. Those numbers become the rhythm of survival. Officers above look down through reinforced grates, counting time with eyes and cameras. The air smells of dust and disinfectant. When an inmate steps into this pit, the door closes behind him with a sound that feels permanent. It is called recreation. But most men here use the hour to measure the distance between their heartbeat and silence. Somewhere inside this ritual, the mind starts to bend. It learns the scale of its world and stops fighting against walls that never move. The wind carries faint echoes from far-off mountains, reminders of a world that no one in here can touch. Inside ADX, freedom is geometry. It is measured in circles, not miles. Most meals in ADX arrive through the same narrow slot that delivers everything else. Orders, inspections, medicine, and sometimes danger. The slot is a line in the wall that divides two worlds. A tray slides in the hand that passes it unseen. Food here is nutrition by calculation, not taste. The right calories, the right balance, nothing sharp, nothing that can be reshaped into something else. Officers wear gloves and speak little. The cameras record the transfer as precisely as a transaction. When the tray is withdrawn, the slot seals itself with a clean metallic click. That sound is finality. The problem is that nothing moves without permission. Inside the cell, the man eats alone. The concrete table, the fixed stool, the smooth mirror. Everything reminds him that control is not cruelty but design. Even kindness here is measured and timed. Some inmates tap their fingers against the wall, a Morse code of habit, not rebellion. Others just stare at the tiny strip of sky, wondering what the stars look like beyond a slit so narrow it could be mistaken for mercy. Most meals in ADX arrive through the same narrow slot that delivers everything else. Orders, inspections, medicine, and sometimes danger. The slot is a line in the wall that divides two worlds. A tray slides in the hand that passes it unseen. Food here is nutrition by calculation, not taste. The right calories, the right balance, nothing sharp, nothing that can be reshaped into something else. Officers wear gloves and speak little. The cameras record the transfer as precisely as a transaction. When the tray is withdrawn, the slot seals itself with a clean metallic click. That sound is finality. The problem is that nothing moves without permission. Inside the cell, the man eats alone. The concrete table, the fixed stool, the smooth mirror. Everything reminds him that control is not cruelty but design. Even kindness here is measured and timed. Some inmates tap their fingers against the wall, a Morse code of habit, not rebellion. Others just stare at the tiny strip of sky, wondering what the stars look like beyond a slit so narrow it could be mistaken for mercy. As night falls over the Rockies, the prison changes color. The desert sky drained from pale blue to iron gray. The lights along the perimeter fence flicker on in sequence, one after another, like the world shutting its eyes. Inside, motion detectors awaken, calibrated to sense everything from a rat's weight to a man's breath. The control center hums. Cameras pivot, pressure pads arm, and guard begin their night rounds. Beyond the walls, coyotes sometimes howl in the distance, their cries mixing with the low hum of generators. Inside, no one answers. The cells glow faintly with the artificial warmth of fluorescent light. Men read until the automatic timer cuts the power. Others lie awake, listening to the echo of their own heartbeats. Every sound is cataloged, every silence logged. And yet, under all the layers of security, there's a single human truth. Every night here feels longer than it should.